Okay, we're going to continue what we started last week about talking about loosely army-related shilas. Now, not everyone was here last week, so I'll just give like a drop of a recap. We mentioned that there is a historical perspective that suggests that the Chashmonaim did not do battle on Shabbos. There's not just the Chashmonaim, but many different Jewish armies throughout the generations, it seems, didn't do battle on Shabbos. It seems to have been makbid. Now, we raised the point that according to Chazal, the Gemara in Shabbos and Daf Yotes, it's very clear that you're allowed to do battle on Shabbos. Not only are you allowed to, it seems to be a very expansive heter that almost obligates you to do Mulchama on Shabbos. So, we came to the conclusion that more than likely Klal Yisrael did do battle on Shabbos, and it was observers who were not fully educated in the nuance and the minutiae of Shabbos that presumed that whatever little detail they noticed was really that Klal Yisrael wasn't doing battles, and essentially Klal Yisrael was actually battling on Shabbos. Now, I want to segue off that into a different angle. Now, we closed up last week by bringing the Rambam that allows eating treif during battle, and we explained that there's a few different mahalchim in the Rambam. Some say that the laws of Pikuach Nefesh are just more broad when it comes to an army, meaning when you're making decisions for such a large tzibur and such an intense time, so the amount of need that you need to constitute Pikuach Nefesh is minute, meaning a little tiny amount constitutes Pikuach Nefesh already. That was one of the versions that we explained. Now there is more versions, and I want to explain another version and open up a whole other topic with it. So first, I just want to read something that the Deris Rishonim from Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Halevi writes as follows. He's one of the preeminent rabbinicist historians, like a history through rabbinics. It's a very sophisticated history of Klal Yisrael. He addresses this nakuda of did Klal Yisrael go to battle on Shabbos or not. And he writes as follows. He's writing about the Chashmonaim. He says, Ki amnam, he says, Ki be'emes, he says as follows, be'emes, lo hayasham lo dim pikuach nefashis, lo dim mulchama. There was no pikuach nefashis, there was no mulchama. It could have been a Sunday. There'd be no reason not to defend yourself if you're able to save yourself. It was just that everything was perceived as just a gzeira, shmad. They had two choices. It was very binary. Either you give your life up or you run away. He says, it never crossed the Chashmonaim's mind yet that they could raise to battle against the Yevanim. All they did was hide. The only thing they knew to do was to hide and wait till the danger passes. He says, Bnei Yehuda b'yamim shelifnei zeh kvar hayu miyamim rabim tchila tachas haparsiyim v'achas tachas yad Yevanim. They were a vassal state. They were not an army. They didn't have a very good structure to fight battles. They were first under the Persians, then they were under the Greeks, and later under the Romans. They had no army, they didn't have weapons, they didn't have training, they had no idea what they were doing. The idea to go to battle was totally foreign to them, he says. Only later on did the Chashmonaim come to this conclusion that, we could rise up in battle, and we demarcated an Al Nisim by saying, Gibarim b'yad chalashim, meaning they had no reason to win this battle. This wasn't a battle they were expected to win. It was totally supernatural that they were able to win the battle. So the Deris Rishonim, he writes unequivocally, it's silly to draw any conclusions from this. They just were not involved in battle. They didn't know it was a war. As far as they were concerned, this was a religious gzeira that they were hoping to, what do you say? Yidden at that time. All of Klal Yisrael at that time. Yeah, from the beginning of Vayesheni, they never had an army like this. It wasn't something they had. So he says they just didn't realize they were in battle. Now, the term that he's using is that they say they didn't realize that they were in a Mulchama. They didn't know it was a Shas Mulchama. Now that's the second alternate understanding of these heterim, like for Shabbos and kosher and whatever that I want to go into. There's another whole way of learning the din that you're allowed to be Mechal Shabbos for battle, and that's as follows. There's a Rivash.
They didn't fight on Shabbos because they weren't fighting war.
They weren't fighting a war yet. Exactly.
Obviously they weren't fighting on Shabbos.
Exactly. They weren't fighting. He says it was a Tuesday. As he says, Tuesday, Sunday, Shabbos. He says it's totally inconsequential what day of the week it was. Now, there's a Rivash in a Tshuva, in Tshuva Kuf Aleph, where the Rivash, I want to just read you the language of the Rivash. He quotes the Gemara in Shabbos that says Adridita, and he quotes it in a very interesting format. He says, if I can find it, he says like this. He says, this din, he says that ad ridita, you're allowed to fight on Shabbos. He says as follows, Mechalanas HaShabbos l'chol tzarech ha'matzar. You mechal Shabbos for all the tzrachim of the siege. Even if it's not a sakana. Now that's a very, very wild line the Rivash is saying. He says, even if it's not a sakana at all, the Rivash over here took sakana, took the whole din of Pikuach Nefesh, Deicha Shabbos, put it aside, and said there's a brand new din. There's a din that war is Deicha Shabbos. It has nothing to do, war is Deicha Yisurim, it's Deicha Kashrus, it's Deicha Shabbos, even if it's not a sakana. He says, in no uncertain terms, Afilu Shalem Pnei Sakana. This is the Rivash writing. He's teaching the Gemara in Shabbos to be a much more open-ended and broad rule. That war has different rules. The rules of war are not the same as the rules of regular daily living. Daily living requires Pikuach Nefesh in order to be Deicha Shabbos. War doesn't require Pikuach Nefesh. It's a whole different set of standards. A Shas Milchama has different rules. It's different standards during a Shas Milchama. Now, there's many Achronim that you could say, let's say, who say the same like thing, this same type of teretz, each one in their own words, obviously. But Lamashal, there's a Minchas Chinuch. The Minchas Chinuch says as follows. I want to read the Minchas Chinuch in mitzvah Tav Chaf Hey, which is the mitzvah of Mechias Amalek. The Chinuch says everyone is chayav Mechias Amalek. How are you over this? If you came upon an Amaleki and you're able to kill him without endangering yourself, and you don't kill him, that's considered being violating the Zizur of Mechias Amalek. Frekt Minchas Chinuch a kash like this. He wants to know. He says as follows. He says Yodua. He says the Torah leitismach dina ala nes. The Torah didn't give halachas that are going to be reliant on nisim. Kemvur B'Ramban. Ubederach ha'olam, he says, Neragim mishnei tzaddim be'es milchama. When you go to battle, some people die on both sides. There's no such thing as nobody dying on both sides. Imkein chazina and the Torah gazra lilchem yimam aftu sakana. All the rules of Pikuach Nefesh, meaning he says, if you're going to go with the regular rules of Pikuach Nefesh, Deicha everything, you'll never go to battle. You'll tell me it's dangerous to go to war. How can I go to war? It's dangerous. Right? We know we stay away from danger. Shma'at ha'ma'id, Pikuach Nefesh, Deicha everything. It's dangerous. War is dangerous. The war inherently is dangerous. Elamai says there's a suspension of all the regular halachas. The regular din of Pikuach Nefesh don't apply anymore. So they don't understand why the Chinuch says you're only chayav to kill an Amaleki if you're not going to put yourself in danger. Who cares if you're going to put yourself in danger? It's a war. It's a battle. And the Netziv in his way, and the Briskrav in his way, all the Achronim say this like this klal that Shas Milchama has different dinim. A wartime has different dinim. Now, what exactly constitutes wartime, and are wars today called wartime or not, is a very open-ended question, etc. Now, what did you say? Yeah, that's the most important question. That's the one we're not going to talk about. So I want to talk about a little bit the shaila of friendly fire in this context. Meaning, now that we're saying that there is a suspension of regular halachas during a wartime, and wartime has like a different framework of halachas, let's talk about the idea of killing someone by accident, those halachas normally, and how they play out like friendly fire in a battle. Now, as follows, this is actually a bit of a hot button topic these days about what exactly is the responsibilities of someone who kills someone by mistake. Right? This is the question. Now, we know obviously that Bimei Chazal there was something called Galus, right? Bimei Chazal, the whole most of Masechtas Makos is about it. There was Ari Miklat that was set up all throughout Eretz Yisrael and Ever Yarden, and someone who killed someone b'shoigig, one who killed someone by accident, would run to the Ari Miklat, and that's how he would have to be saved, right? Now, Ari Miklat was no walk in the park. You had to leave wherever you were living, whatever job you had. You go to the Ari Miklat, which is specific cloistered cities, wherever they are, and you live there for an undetermined amount of time, right? It's an Admais Kain Gadol, which could be 6 months, it could be 6 years, it could be 60 years, it could be, there's no undetermined amount of time that you stay there for. If you step out for a second, according to one man damar, it's a mitzvah to kill you, and anybody who wants could participate in it. According to the other man damar, it's a rishus, but even so, your life's in danger. Right? It's no walk in the park. Our Miklat cities are not too big, not too small. Someone who likes to live in a big city wouldn't have that. Someone who likes to live in a quaint little village wouldn't have that. Our Miklats, it's not a walk in the park. Now, you could look at it on one end that it saves your life, but mitzad sheni, it also crimps your style. It makes you live a very particular life. It's like having an ankle bracelet. What is it? Okay, some could say it's like an ankle bracelet. You know what I'm saying? It's very, very particular. And the chinuch taka in the chinuch, when he says the tamei mitzvah, the chinuch says one of the tamei mitzvah of the mitzvah of galus is that it's supposed to be a kapara. It's an einish. I'm sorry, he uses the word einish. It's an einish. It's a low level form of an einish, meaning you kill someone on purpose, then you get put to death. You kill someone by accident, you get some sort of punishment that's not so direct. Now, the Torah, in the end of Cheshem Mishpat and Siman Tav Chaf Hey, says, Bizman Hazeh, there's no such a thing as Galus anymore, because Galus requires Bezdin, Galus requires Eretz Yisrael, Galus requires, all the dinim that it requires, and the dinim of Galus are batal. That's what the Torah says. And he says it pretty straightforward, and it doesn't seem like there's any Achronim or Chelik on him. Now, what's interesting is that there is, I'll read you the Torah. The Torah says, Mitzvah ladim b'chayv misas bezdin, v'sheyigla haritzeach l'ari miklat, v'ata ein anu danim dinin nefashis. We don't damn this anymore. Sha'af bizman habayis batlu dinin nefashis. V'chal sheken ata she'en l'dainim, she'tzrichem bezdin she'chav gimel. V'chein ari miklat, ein lanu sheyigla b'hem haritzeach. We don't have any more ari miklat for the ritzeach to go to them. This is what the Torah says. He's really quoting from the Gainim that say bizman is ari miklat is batal. Now, I will tell you that there is a psak I saw brought down by Shem Hershel Schachter about someone who killed someone by accident. He, I don't remember what the story was, and he told the guy to go live in Chevron, because Chevron was one of the original Ari Miklat, and like that, he's Mekayim the din of Ari Miklat. Make of that what you may. In any case, there's an interesting, call it like sort of stira of sorts. The Shulchan Aruch and Siman Shin Lamed Vav in Yeridea, when the Shulchan Aruch is talking about a doctor who makes a mistake, and he kills someone by mistake, a doctor who commits malpractice, and he kills someone by mistake, the Shulchan Aruch says like this, it says, a roife who kills someone by mistake, he became aware that he made a mistake and it's an error that he killed this person and it's his own fault. Goyla al yadai. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Now this is very interesting because the Shulchan Aruch seemingly in Chayshim Mishpat, based on the Torah and the Gainim, seems to hold that Galus is off the table. It doesn't exist anymore. Meaning in the proper location in Shulchan Aruch where you should discuss Galus, he brings nothing. But in Yeridea, later on, in a totally unrelated case, he seems to talk about Galus. Now because of this, the Achrayim, the Paiskim, learn from this that although the core real McCoy Galus of going to one of the 6 Ari Miklat is batal, but the idea of Galus, the idea of someone being severely penalized for killing someone by accident, still exists into the modern era and needs to be somewhat enforced. Now, how does the Shtal Zachais? If you look, you can take a look in the Shari Tshuva in Hilchos Yom Kippurim. When there's a Shari Tshuva brings a list. It's probably 10 Paiskim who have shilas about this, and the questions range. They're very interesting. They're very familiar questions. There's many questions in the Paiskim about someone who killed someone by accident. Most of them are about wagon accidents and gun accidents. Go figure. Not much has changed, right? Meaning the most of them are like Lamashal. Kveiger has a shayla about a guy who was driving at night in his wagon, and he brought his son and his Heisbacher along to help him with the packages, and they were sitting on the back bench of the wagon. You know, the wagon has like a front bench and a back bench and a cab, and they were sitting on the outside of the wagon on the back bench. They dozed off, and when he gave the horse a whip and the horse picked up speed, they jerked them off. They both fell off. They snapped their necks. They both died. And yeah, it's supposed to shock you. Kveiger was shocked. Kveiger he writes in the tshuva like, I'm broken up about the question. I can't even imagine such a question. I mean, like Kveiger's broken about the question, but that's a question. There's other questions, Lamashal, of people who are on guard duty. What did you say?
What's about that?
No, so the guy came to Kveiger. He said, "What do I do? How do I? What do I do? The wagon driver comes up and he says, how do I fix this? What's my resolution? What do I do to resolve this?" And the Lamashal, the Ramah has a tshuva like this. The Marshal has a tshuva like this. The Maram Lublin has 2 tshuvas about it. Kveiger has, the Chassam Sofer has. All the major Paiskim over the last bunch of hundreds of years have similar questions like this. Now, what's interesting is like this: the Rekeach has a sefer called Meiser Rekeach. I don't know what it's published under different names, but the Rekeach has a whole seder tshuva that he gives. Now the Rekeach gives you specific things to do to fix specific averos. Now for someone who kills someone b'shoigig, here's what the Rekeach says, and based on this is where most of the Achrayim draw their reasoning from. He says as follows: Yelich b'goyle shalish shanim. Somebody killed someone by accident. He says he should go and go 3 years. V'yilka b'chol ir. Now just keep track of the Sainish. Every town that he shows up to, he's going to be in Galus. Every town that he shows up to, he introduces himself. He says, "Hi, I'm Yankel. I killed someone by accident. Could someone beat me, please?" That's literally what the Rekeach is being mechayev. He says, "V'yomer Reitzeach ani." He has to introduce himself and say, "I'm a Reitzeach." V'leyochal basar v'leyish yayin. He can't eat meat or drink wine. V'leyegaleach sar zakanav v'reishay. No haircut, no beard cut. V'leyechabes es begadav. No cleaning clothing. V'leyirchatz es b'sarei. No bathing. If he's a kana yirchatz, he could wash his beard pamachas b'chodesh once a month. Right, his beards are, that could be a mess. Like you could have a bird's nest in there. So beards you have to once a month. You should wear like a chain around the arm that caused the ritzicha to incapacitated for this whole term. He should go barefoot. And he should cry al ritzichasei. And every day he should fast until nightfall until he finishes galus. A year after, keep in mind this was 3 years of this. Then for 1 year after that, Yisana Sheni v'Chamishi, should fast every Monday and Thursday. Even though he already fasted 3 years in a row. You should never do anything bad to any person, and you should take abuse from anybody who gives it to you. If somebody calls you a ritzach, al yiskaitet. Achiyeh kemachrish v'liyelech l'shok b'eis and gevashanim. Don't go to market during those 3 years. When you leave the shul, you should lay down in front so people could step on you and trample on you and kick at you. And this is a fascinating detail. You should mechabed your wife and every person. And I see people there are those who shtazach up like, what is this yechabed as ishtay? Like, why is that a tshuva? The meanings, if you didn't kill someone, you don't have to mechabed your wife. Only murderers should mechabed their wife. This is a very interesting one. Yechabed as ishtay v'chol adam v'yisvade b'chol yom. You should say vidoy. So this very simple, not unintrusive prescription is for a shaygig. Exactly, is what the Rekeach prescribes. What do you say? Not of the Ritzach. Ishta of the Ritzach, not of the Nirtzach. Ishta of the Ritzach. This very, very simple, unintrusive, very easy, right? Easy prescription is what the Rekeach is requiring of each individual who kills someone b'shaygig to do. Now the Merami Rotenberg in a tshuva in one of the Maduros Merami Rotenberg, I don't remember which one exactly right now, brings this lahalacha and says this is the halacha, this is how we pass. Now over time, the Rekeach's Sidrei HaTshuva were chiseled down a little bit because it's draconian and because it's too much. We're not made from that type of stuff anymore. A 3-year fast is not something that almost no one can handle a 3-year fast. And over time, the Rekeachs like Sidrei HaTshuva were chiseled down. But in all the poskim that discuss these shaylas, the Mashal, the Ramah, for example, when he brings a shayla of someone who killed someone by accident, he brings, liberally adapting the Rekeach for the modern era, looser than the Rekeach, but liberally adapting from the Rekeach's, tshuva situation. Now, a famous one that talks about this is as follows. I want to read you the Shaila. He says as follows. This is the Maram Lublin's Shaila. He says, "Ma'aseh be'ish kshei ruach, ish chayli u'machav, v'gam chayli b'chayli anechve, al ma'aseh bilti tar she'ina likim liyadeh." Al dvar mashal akadmainik yizek, he says as follows. He says, "Kasher ragel liyas bekarcha yosh ve'amachuz, v'chalachad m'choyev liyas muchan v'kli mashchisa b'yadeh." They live in a village. The village is subject to attacks from marauding gangs and brigands and criminals. And the rule in the town is everybody has to take a shift, being on guard duty, he says. V'kli mashchisa b'yadeh, you have to have your gun in your hand. La'arech milchama, v'krav, kenegdam, b'tzivei haduchs. This is a rule that the Duke made, v'asarim. V'hi hayoyim yara ha'ish hanoichechi, Blistira Shakarin B'Lashon Ashkenaz Bix, what's called the Bix, which is a gun in German. He had like a X on the wall across from his house. In the beginning of his shift, you take out the rifle and you aim it at the point, you shoot, like that, the gun's working, and then you start your shift. This is what the minig was, he says. One person came, he passed by that axe. No one saw him. Nobody did it on purpose. It was just a terrible story that happened. This is the Maram Lublin's Shaila. Maram Lublin goes on. He brings a whole Seder Tshuva for this guy to do, based on all the rules of the Rekeach. And there's I'm telling you, there's probably 10 of these Tshuvas of all the different places to bring it. It's interesting is that today the most common thing that we do for someone who dies an untimely death, be it in a car accident, be it whatever it is write a Sefer Torah. It's the most common prescription. Now, Baruch Hashem, today there's a tremendous amount of Sefer Torah. Almost no shul is missing Sefer Torah. And I've heard people, kvetch about it, whatever. But it's interesting is that Reb Kveger in his tshuva about, people say, use the money for other things. There's a million other tzveks you could use money for. You don't have to give it. But Sefer Torah sits in the Aron. We have Sefer Torah, Reb Kveger in his tshuva over here about a similar case. Reb Kveger is writing about a bacher who died in some wagon accident. And Reb Kveger writes that, Hayos, this bacher is not going to be able to produce children of his own, you should write a Sefer Torah. He says as follows, because then they'll learn from the Sefer Torah and he'll have some sort of kiyum forever from the Sefer Torah that this Baruch will have. So Rebbe Kveger is actually maybe, but he might be the one who introduced this idea of writing Sefer Torah like Lila Nishmas, someone who dies an untimely death. I don't know, I haven't done like, what I say? No, but the Ritzeach does tshuva like this. The Ritzeach pays for it. Ritzeach's got to pay for it. But Rebbe Kveger introduces this idea of writing Sefer Torah as like a mascaras. Now, and these tshuvas go on and on. Now, there's many examples. Now, the question that I want to discuss today is as follows. Obviously, in any war, there are occurrences of friendly fire, right? People could die from their own, from people from the same team. Blue on blue, red on red, and in this most recent war in Gaza. So there was that story a bunch of months ago. There was those 3 hostages who came out, right, waving the white flag, and were shot down by soldiers from the Golani Brigade. So aside from the therapy bill that the PTSD that these soldiers have, I'm sure, for shooting 3 hostages who I think were captive already at that point for 7 months or whatever, terrible, terrible, tragic story. And it's far from the only story, meaning you have to look what the stats are, but it's a few dozen, I think, of soldiers from the 1,000 soldiers who were killed in the last war. A few dozen of them, I think, were killed from friendly fire. And this is unfortunately the reality of modern war. So putting aside the PTSD and the drama and etc., the trauma and etc., what would be the din with all these sidrei hatshuva that the poskim are talking about? A soldier who by accident, kills a fellow soldier, a hostage, something like that. What's the situation with that? Does he have to do tshuva? Does he have to be treated like he's a ritzach b'shogeg? If he's a kohen, is he allowed to duchen anymore? Meaning, what's the status? Do we look at him like a murderer, or do we say he's not a murderer b'chlal? Now, what's interesting is there's a few tshuvas that talk about relatively similar questions to this that I want to borrow from. The idea that I'm suggesting, though, is I think that part of the expansion of the rule of shas milchama, of a battle zone, means that there are certain, call it risks and certain terrible outcomes that are guaranteed to happen that are baked into the cake. Meaning, we explained the Rivash's understanding of the Rambam and the Metziv and the Briskerov understanding of the Rambam, that wartime is it's a different type of halachas. The regular halachas of pikuach nefesh and danger and etc. are suspended, because wartime is just different. It's dangerous inherently, right? Automatically, there's downside. That's what war is. I think that l'chayra, a shayla like this, a friendly fire, would have the same halachas. Meaning, to say that a person who's engaged in war, where the idea of war is that we're going into a dangerous situation, it's a volatile, dangerous situation, but the overarching goal is protective in nature, is defensive in nature, it's saving people. That's the overarching the goal of the war. So even if le'aleinu, terrible outcomes come out of it, that is also, I think, baked into the cake, meaning that's the war. Now, I'll show you a few examples in the Chuvas over here, not directly saying what we're saying, but I think that gives us enough of a leg to stand on. There's a marshal in Chuvas Tzadik Vav that has his child as follows. A ma'aseh with a nar shenir defayidei nachrim, v'glal shepasha negdam. There was a child, let's say a kid, he stole something, a teenager, he stole something from the goyim, and the goyim are chasing him. Uba Yehudi, a yid comes, v'etztaref, and he starts chasing after together with them. Because he thinks that if he chases out with the goyim, he'll be able to control the situation. He's going to save him. He plans on rescuing, he plans on rescuing them. He joins the attacking party just so that we could have a person at the table and he'll be able to save the kid. Now, ultimately, what happens is the child becomes so fearful, he makes a mistake, he falls into a pit, and he dies. Meaning the kid who's running away is not able to survive the chase, and he dies on the chase. Now, the shayl comes to the marshal and he asks, "What's my obligation over here?" Yes, technically, he says, I was part of the chase party. I was part of the guy who were chasing him, but that's not at all what my kavana was. I really only wanted to save him. Now, the marshal writes in the tshuva over there that this guy who joined the chase party does not have to do any tshuva, he says. Because he says essentially what you were engaging in was a ma'aseh of hatzala. It was misunderstood by this guy. He didn't know what you were doing, and he didn't see it as such, and he thought his life was in danger from everybody, and he ended up dying from it. But essentially what you were engaging in was a ma'aseh of hatzala. You were not engaging in a ma'aseh of thing. He says, this that we say, the poskim say, and the rekeach, and all the earlier poskim say, that if you kill someone b'shogeg, you need to do tshuva, that's like a neutral act. You're just existing, you're doing something, you didn't mean to kill someone, it was a terrible outcome that you killed someone, you have to do tshuva for that. Even a neutral act, that's called a shogeg. But when you're doing a proactive act of hatzala, you're actually engaging in trying to save someone's life, you're doing a good thing, and something bad comes out of it, that's not included in the shayla of shogeg. This is what the marshal says. Now, it's not exactly like our shayla, but I think it's very similar to the idea. I think it's from this marshal, you could definitely see the call it the pathway, the roadmap to saying that wartime could be defined very similarly. Wartime is you're going into this murky, messy, volatile, dynamic situation, but you're going into it ostensibly with the best of intentions, right? You're going in to try to kill who you're supposed to kill and save who you're supposed to save, and you're going to fight so that everyone behind you is safe, right? You're going into, so essentially what you're engaging in is a ma'aseh of hatzala, like the marshal says. Sometimes it's misunderstood, and sometimes the bullets are going in the wrong direction, and sometimes you end up doing something that's terrible. But to call that someone who's doing just a neutral action, saying that needs to do tshuva for a ma'aseh b'shogeg, l'chayra the marshal would agree that there's no shogeg, there's no shogeg in such a circumstance.
Would there be enough community in an offensive versus a defensive war?
So I think so, but it's very gray, because essentially offensive wars are also to save the people behind you, right? Meaning, if you're talking about a country that's a bad country, right? A land grab, maybe not. No, it could be just a. So kibbutz haaretz is a different mitzvah. There's a mitzvah of kibbutz haaretz, and that's a whole separate shmuz for itself. There could be kibbutz haaretz, and now the shaila if that applies with Zanazeh or not. What do you say? Yeah, but it could be kibbutz haaretz is also a mitzvah, and maybe there's more heterim for it. It's mashma from the Rishonim, the Rambam. The kibbutz haaretz has more heterim, but that's not really what we're talking about over here. But a land grab, maybe not. If you're going just a grand lab, but if you're going to protect, the tzibur at large, protect the country at large, then presumably this could fit into the same category of the marshal. So I'm just, I guess, what just to wrap this up over here, what we're trying to do over here is we're explaining that there's a whole second way of understanding the mitzvah of adridita, understanding the heter of violating specific halachas when it comes to wartime, and that is that wartime has its own different halachas than everything else. And based on that, I think I'm trying to expand that to the very tragic shaila, friendly fire, and I think you could suggest that the marshal is a very good zushtal to that. Okay, to be continued. Something happier, Mitzvah Shem.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.